We Get Outdoors Nation. I sometimes think I've got the best job on planet Earth because I get to go and spend most of my days 2 or 3 times a day talking to a new friend from somewhere else in the world who's got lots in common with me. And today, I've got a new friend, Johnny from Denmark, otherwise known as the SimpleWoodsman on Instagram, who, I think we could just go and find out what he does, but I think he's a bit of a woodsman bushcraft dude. Johnny, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi, Rob. Thank you very much.
No worries. It's great to have you. So, Johnny, what should the world know about you? Or what could they know about you?
Well, I'm just a regular guy from Denmark, I guess. I've been outdoors all my life, and I just reached a point where I don't care what people think about it anymore. So I just started taking photos of whatever I like to do outdoors and see if I can find some like-minded folks out there.
Yeah, and it appears like you found quite a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a few hanging around still. So,
well, yeah. Tell me, what was it for you where you thought I just don't care anymore, or I don't give a shit anymore? I'm just going to go and take photos of what I enjoy and share it with people.
Well, I've been into the outdoors most of my life, and at some point, I was doing bushcrafting and small crafts and whatever, just for my own, happiness and to get some tranquility outdoors and connect with the outdoors, nature especially, because I need it. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I just spotted some people doing a bit what I did on Instagram, and after a while, I thought I'd give them a follow and also share a bit of what I did with the community. And so I basically just started recording some of the odd things, the crooked things I do.
What sort of crooked things do you do? Tell me more.
Oh, well, it's just, I'm a curious soul. I like to experiment, like to use my hands. It's a 50-50 mix of being outdoors and crafting things to see if they work, to try old techniques and stuff with news. Just whatever keeps me busy.
So you, were you brought up in the outdoors by your parents, and that's where the love started, or what was the trigger for you to decide you love the outdoors?
I was brought up with being a Boy Scout, and at that time, both my parents were Scout leaders as well. But I spent, if I wasn't at school, I was outdoors anyways, playing around, and that's just every day after school, I'd just run out because I instantly just understood I needed to be there. And I think it has been that for many guys. I mean, you remember that time when you're just playing around with muds and sticks and making small huts and dreaming. Yeah. And then you get through a period of time where you have to prove everything. You have to be an adult. And at some point, if you're lucky, and if you can sort of catch yourself, I think you could take a round with your childhood once more.
It's very interesting. My grandmother became more childlike in her humor and exploration of the world as she got older. And it wasn't that she was going crazy. It was that just she didn't care anymore. She was like, oh, I can be childish and have real fun and laugh properly and all those other things. And I wonder what would happen if we all just stayed as children, how smiley the world would be.
Yeah, well, I think you have to have some real joy in your life. I have my children, my family, and good friends, and but I also need to do stuff to connect with nature. It's a part of who I am, and the thought of being less serious all the time. There's enough seriousness in the world. There's so much of it going on, and if you watch the news all the time, you would quickly get the sense that it's only negative things in the world. sensations, the war and the crimes and the drugs, and then that's your perception of the world, unless you change your focus into something really good and really good for you, and maybe if you're lucky enough, pass some of it on to someone else. I'm pretty much an advocate for playing as much as possible. I have the serious parts of my life as well as any grown-ups have, even children in some parts of the world. It's not something we can avoid, but we can definitely seek sort of a counterweight for that in lives.
And you did do the outdoors in a pretty serious way by joining the military, right? I mean, how did that come about?
It wasn't my fault. I got drafted. Yes. So don't blame me. No, it wasn't my fault. I got picked up to go to the sergeant school as well, and suddenly, before I knew it, sort of 8-9 years had passed in the infantry and reconnaissance, and I just no more for me, and I wanted to get out. And I got an education as an outdoor guide, and I just started. I was lucky enough to get a job at a travel agency doing some more adventurous traveling all around the globe. And I think that sort of it educated me, and it saved me in a way as well, mentally, to get a soft landing.
Yeah, I often think there's a massive shock going into the military, and there's probably an even bigger shock coming out the other side.
Yeah, I saw a lot of blokes, they came home and they jumped into this bucket of I don't care. And that's the worst place you can be, to be numb. If you can't give anything some weight, some serious weight in your hearts and importance, because when you're in the army life, it's black and white, and it's now or never. It's life and death, and it's sort of, I think for many people it's actually easier than being in all this grayscale modern world we have, because it's a bit easier to feel what's going on, and if you don't really, really, really wake up afterwards and make this civilian life just as important, then you've lost something, haven't you?
Very much so. Because I've never been. I tried to join the military, but I've never been in the military as a soldier or sailor or anything like that. But from what I'm hearing you saying is there's only kind of right or wrong in the military, whereas when you're out of the military, everything is kind of maybe one way or maybe the other, and finding a place can be quite challenging.
Yeah, it can be challenging to take in small everyday life tasks and make them important, to give them value. Yeah, I think for many blokes getting home, that's the real issue. That's the core of it, and you have to sort of stop and give your life some value, and just to think of who am I and what do I want? What is the core of what makes me happy? And I think some people never get to that point, and some people get to that in a very early stage of life.
Did you find being outdoors and experimenting with wilderness living, bushcrafty stuff, it bought you the time and space to actually go and think about, actually, now I'm not in the military anymore, who am I and what do I really do in life, and what purpose do I serve?
Yeah, definitely. I did a lot of that bushcraft and survival skill thing before I joined the army. I got some books when I was not very old, the Special Air Service Survival Handbook, and Lars Felt from Norway, and saw the Les Hiddens, the bush chucker man on the telly, and I was it just struck me as, well, why does it have to be so difficult? I mean, can you choose some other path in life that's not so, you know, I don't know how to explain that, but they have a way around them, and I already loved the nature, so there was idols for me at that point in life, and I think being educated as an outdoor guide afterwards helped me a lot, changing focus. Before in the army, you look at guidelines, you look at short corridors, you look at what can I get behind and how can I advance in the terrain, and how can I, it's a different focus than when you're looking at, oh, there's a pheasant there, or this, you don't look at the shadows anymore. At some point you just light over a campfire and actually enjoy it. No, you can laugh, but trust me, it's not easy at first. Yeah, if you've been living a long time, not being able to light a candle in the dark because someone would see you, and then suddenly change the focus 180 degrees. But I was very conscious about having to do that and wanting to do that to find that love of nature I had before.
That's very funny, because in the military, people often assume you're going to have the adventure of a lifetime and see the outdoors and travel and whatever else. And I don't think that's always the case. I think you do get to go to a lot of places, but you don't really get to experience it because you're kind of hiding as opposed to being present.
Depending what you do and when you do it. But yes, you do learn a lot about different lifestyle, cultures, but there's a tendency to be stuck in the backside of things. You don't get to see when a country is prospering, blossoming, or being built up. Everybody's happy, because then there's no reason for you being there, right?
Yeah. Sure, that gets depressing then, doesn't it? Because you just get to see the worst of a place and then leave.
Yeah, but no, you also get to see. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into my army days, because it's part of my past. I've moved on, but yeah, you if you're lucky enough, I went to the Balkans some years after to see some of the places actually in blossoming, and it made me happy. So it's not always a bad thing.
That's awesome. It's really funny that you just mentioned a book, and almost every person who does bushcraft I interview, survival, wilderness living, doesn't matter what you woodsman, doesn't matter what you call it, they all have hidden away somewhere the Lofty Wiseman SAS Survival Handbook.
Yeah, but it's so scary. And I mean, you see all these pictures. Imagine being 10 and opening that for the first time. Wow, that's how you do it. And I grabbed my pocket knife and I ran out and I made traps, and I made, I couldn't stop it. It was a lavine, it's an avalanche rolling me.
It's incredible. I interviewed a guy called Paul Kirtley the other week.
Yeah.
And he spoke about as a kid, like you open up the Lofty Wiseman book and you get to a page and you pick the next thing that you want, and then off, as you say, you grab your pocket knife and you run off into the outdoors and you go do it, and then next weekend's the same.
Yeah, definitely. I think I made a small pocket book where I wrote down everything, and I just kept a journal of what I did, and small drawings of what went wrong, and just with the geek glasses on, just really submerged into my own little world there. Yeah, but I loved it, and I still do. But I think but the point about don't giving a care anymore is I often met people saying, "What do you do out there?" Because I've always been a lot alone, doing stuff outdoors, because at an early stage in life, I felt that's actually what I need sometimes to regain, instead of just being around people that want stuff from me or want help or support or whatever. And then if you can't do anything good for yourself, well, what do you have to give, really? I mean,
it's very interesting.
It's just not an egoistic thing. It's just a matter of perspective,
So I've worked in the I've worked in the outdoors most of my adult life, and was brought up in the Boy Scouts and the Cubs, just like you were talking about. And the Lofty Wiseman book, I think I got when I was 11 years old or somewhere around there. And when I moved to South Africa, I moved to where my wife is from, which is Johannesburg, which is a 15 million person city.
I actually work. I work on a daily basis with a guy called Rob from Johannesburg.
Oh wow! Yeah. There's two of us.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say that.
Sorry.
I've become slowly. Well, I started to become slowly miserable living in the city, and like a slow erosion, or like I don't know something, and then I went off to the African bush, and suddenly within just a few days you feel human again. Then you go back to the city and you feel bleh. And for the first time in my life, I wonder whether most people feel bleh, like living in the city and having the 8 till 5 job and so on and so forth. Like, is that how everybody else feels? Because it's not nice.
No, I couldn't agree more. I've been living in Copenhagen and places all over the world, actually. And it's always a bit of I like to see them, but then I want to escape the cities. But I definitely recognize the feeling. And I think it's a common thing for many, many people to feel that way. And suddenly being aware of it, that's the difference. Yeah. I mean, you woke up at some point. We just felt that urge. You can't put a finger. What is it? I need something, but you can't put a finger on it. And suddenly one day, that's why. And then you seek it some more, right?
Which ultimately ends up with a question about which drug are you supplementing for what? Because the outdoors can feel, a tarp in the woods by a waterfall actually can feel a little bit like a drug on occasions. You crave it more.
Yeah, definitely. It's has had a better impact on your body, I guess.
Yeah.
Than most. Yeah. But the sensation of it, just being there and absorbing all this impact on your senses is just so incredibly good for us. At some point, I worked with veterans who had PTSD, and a good friend of mine there, he actually explained it very well. I mean, he said, you have 150,000 generations of hunters and gatherers, and they're sort of the base of all our instincts. And that's 2 kilometers down the road. It's just started here to here. And then we had 5,000 generations as farmers, and just 10 in factories with the industrials, and then 1 behind the screen. And people can't find out why they're so miserable. I think there's so much embedded in our instincts that we're not aware of on a daily basis, that we just suppress them.
It's strange. Whenever I'm feeling grumpy, which doesn't happen that often, to be honest with you, but whenever I'm feeling grumpy or miserable, I go to my garage and I go and pull out all of my carpentry material, material and circular saw and screwdrivers and all that stuff, and I go make something, and something that can be useful. So I made a table at the weekend because that's useful. You feel better. You feel human. I feel like a guy again.
You're using your hands. That's for one thing. You're just shifting focus towards your hands, and it's the same when you go outdoors, because you're shifting elements. All the phone bills and problems with the wife or the children, or troubles in the world. You have the COVID situation and wars, whatever have not. And when you're sort of shifting the element, it is what it is. Suddenly everything is just slowing down. in your mind as well. And you get sort of not a distance feeling about it, but you sort of getting into a helicopter perspective, I think.
So right. I find that when I start doing something, so it could be hiking or putting a tarp up in the woods or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. And I find for the first little bit, my mind it races and then it goes empty. And then something happens after a while where creativity comes, and the frustrations or the problems that I had been facing, I seem to come up with answers like magic after a while.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's very, very true. I had to, I guess mainly because most of my friends or people I've been around a lot of my life, they didn't understand what I was doing outside. And I actually, as I told you, I never really expected people to want to follow what I did, because I was the last expectation I had. But to me, going outdoors, there's sort of a feeling of, the creativity about what you're doing there. As I feel that's mainly why I'm into bushcrafting, because the simple things I bring with me, the more simple stuff I can bring, sort of the more creative I get. And that's my drug. I mean, it's creativity is just the mind playing with your imagination, right? That can be a drug as well. I mean, the less things I bring, the more I have to really put an effort to make these solutions, instead of just having the easy way. I get a lot of that. Why don't you just bring something to just do that the easiest? Why do you have to go the hard way around? Why do you have to go back to the Stone Age? And it's not really my aim.
It's very interesting that in Johannesburg here in COVID last year, we got to about 48 hours to the city running out of petrol and diesel completely because of COVID and closing refineries and whatever else. And suddenly the news went nuts, for want of a better word. And because then they realized if there was no petrol or diesel being produced and the refineries were being closed, that would mean that there's no food getting to the supermarkets. And then what? And it suddenly brought, and I'm not a prepper by the sort of hoarding lots of stuff or building a doomsday bunker. I'm not that.
No.
But it suddenly struck me that the fact that I've got a veggie garden in the garden that produces about half of our vegetables per year. How many people can actually do that for themselves these days? And I think the answer is surprisingly small.
It's a great skill to have. Lacking food. It's a great, great skill to have. Yeah, definitely. But there's a lot of new angles or a new perspective for people going through the pandemic here. Because I don't think the world here in the Western societies are not doing bad. Of course, they had their lives turned upside down in some ways, but not really as many other parts of the world, the poor parts of the world, because that's the impact there is just hysterically bad. I mean. But yeah, I'm very sure that people will see their lives in a different light. Cities are seen in a different light. Suddenly the cities here, they don't have the same things to offer as they used to. There's no cultural life, there's no music, there's no cafes, there's no restaurants, there's no shopping for people. And suddenly what are we going to do? I mean, if you go to the city here, you'll see people running. Just run to get it over with. I'm just running already. I had to run, We're
just going to go and turn off their frustration.
Running is definitely good for you, but it looks a bit sad from the outside, just seeing people running like madmen trying to cope with emptiness or something. It looks like that.
It's very strange because everybody's dealt with the pandemic slightly differently. For me personally, other than I've lost a couple of friends, unfortunately, and very sadly, to COVID, but the rest of it has put a big focus on how important my family is and how much closer we've become as a family. How much money we've saved. Like, you're not going to a bar or a restaurant or even the shops very often, or even driving your car anywhere or very far. And I think there's been a lot of subtle upsides if we could stop and look at it.
Yeah, definitely. There's always something good to learn in a shitty situation. I mean, you know, it's every point of your turning point in your life. If something bad has happened, you can either be a victimized, think of it, or you can really, really sit back and think of your own part and learn a bit about how will I navigate next time, or, you know, it's always something new to pick up.
And is that one of your things that you get from bushcraft, being in the woods, is that ability to get direct feedback from something you've done, learn from it, and make a difference next time?
Yeah, definitely. Direct feedback from my hands, from my failures. I make a lot of them. I even post about them as well, because they're part of it. And it's also, I think that's why I chose the name, you know, the SimpleWoodsman, because keep it simple now. Don't make everything a war of right and wrongs, or don't make it a big discussion of what's the best knife, or it can be interesting as well. But to me, it had a different focus about just being there and being the best version of you that you can be.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I use it for a lot of things. I mean, I'm divorced. I have 2 wonderful daughters, and when they're here, I have a home. And when they're not, then I just have a house. So for me, it's also sometimes an escape. Not sad admitting that, because it's when I'm here, I don't hear their voices or whatever. But when I'm in outdoors, everything is the way it's supposed to be. Yeah.
What's what's your perfect day in the woods look like? If you could design the perfect day, what would it be?
Perfect day. I think I would be more of a mental stage. I love to be in a flow where sometimes it's just being in a flow, walking, trekking, or discovering a new area. I love to go places I haven't been before. There's so many places to see around here. Just pick up my bag and just walk in somewhere and see what I can find along the way, searching for tracks and searching for vegetation, what have we not. But the flow of things, you know, like kind of when you go to your workshop and you start crafting a table. And at first, just you know, you're fine tuning into how I'm going to attack this, and suddenly you're moving and your hands are just doing stuff, and it's not emptying your head, but it's something similar. You're just so focused on what you're doing, just like a child playing.
That's very. And are you fascinated about exploring Denmark, or do you get further afield or overseas, or?
I love to get traveling more. I used to be in a small traveling agency at the same time as doing my regular job in Denmark. Not as I did before. That was before I had my children, because, you know, spending 250, 300 days from home, you can't consider yourself being a dad. It's just not fair to anyone. And after a lot of years traveling, you sort of get a little bit, not fed up, but you get to sort of a point. But I need everyday life as well, a small rhythms, my routines, because you get rootless. Just grabbing your rucksack, going to a new place, meeting new people, and it can be good for a period of time. But at some point, you want something more, something that's deeper, a deeper connection with people, a deeper connection with the place you're staying, and things like that. But I've been outdoors doing all kinds of outdoor activities in most parts of the world. I haven't been to South Africa. I had to admit that, but I want to be there one day. Yeah.
Come visit.
Yeah, I know a guy called Rob.
You know, two of us now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now. Yeah.
Come visit. You're always welcome. We love having guests, as many as possible. So you also make some outdoor gear, is that right? Some outdoor equipment or some?
Yeah, I made a wool anorak 2 years back, and actually that was kind of I just needed a jacket, and I didn't have any money. I saw these awesome wool blanket jackets, and I thought, they look kind of thin, and I wanted something that had a bit more functionality in them. I saw some close-up photos, and all I could think of is I'm not going to throw my money at that, because my money is hard earned. So what I did was just take a wool blanket like so many others before me, and I threw it to a sewing machine so much it was smoking at some point and broke off, and I had a twig on the side to repair it, and at the end it got to be a good result, and it got pretty hyped. And so me and two other friends, we set up a small production of these wool anoraks, and then came the COVID situation. And being a new company with factories stopping bringing things, it's difficulties getting raw materials, so people can't get to work because they have to stay home, and suddenly everything's just stopped. And after a year, we were looking at each other, because we all have hard working jobs, and said, "Nah, it's too much trouble for nothing." So we stopped it. But at the moment, I'm actually trying to make up a new website, producing small things in my own workshop, just one piece at a time, no deadlines, no stress, just as a fun thing. Yeah.
Nice. I spoke to a guy the other week. He makes traditional longbows, and if you
could be Corey, right?
That's it, Corey. Yeah, and like if you want one, you can order one, but you can have it when it's ready. And I'm like, I said to him, when's it ready? He said, when I finished it. And there's no time frame. You just pay him your money and wait for, maybe it's 6 days, maybe it's 6 months. You just have to wait and see.
Yeah. No, I love that philosophy. I mean, I like to go a little bit further and say, if I have it, you can buy it. I mean, I don't like to, because this is also my free space, my MySpace or whatever, and I don't want to tamper with it too much to make it a huge business or anything. It's easy to destroy something you love with doing it too much.
That's very, very true. That's very true. I had a mentor many years ago when I was going to set up my first outdoor business. It was about 16 years ago. He said, why don't you just go and get a job doing something that you like and save what you love for your evenings and weekends? And I naively told him that would never work for me. But it is interesting how what you love, when it turns into a job, you kind of lose some of the love after a little while.
Yeah, you shift your focus. Yeah, I've experienced that first, and I used to draw a lot. making cartoons and caricature drawings and illustrating books and commercials and whatever, just drawing. I spent most of if I wasn't in woods, I was drawing all my school instead of, it's a teacher, which it says, okay, I have to draw. So I was stuck in the paper with a pen, probably reading too many cartoons as well. But at some point in high school, I was just sort of doing it too much. And to some point, I was just vomiting of things to do. And it took out all the joy from me. So I'm very much aware of not to put too much focus and stress into a thing I love, because no, not this one.
So there's lots of things that we can learn in bushcraft and in the outdoors. But what have been some of your, let's say, aha moments of the past year or so? Things that you've been trying to achieve, I don't know, do X, do whatever it may well be, and suddenly you've cracked it, or what's been some of your learning?
Well, quite a few. One of the things that I really, really, really enjoyed was this, I think 17, 20 years ago, I started slowly attempting to building a strong longbow. And my aim was to build it from one piece of wood, not to glue anything together, not to make it a modern thing, but just to try to actually carve out a strong longbow from one single piece of straight grown wood, a tree. And that succeeded. Finally succeeded, that one, and that was a very, very happy feeling, because I've been making so much nice things to just stuff in the wood stove. No, it's I have a lot of admiration for Corey and his like-minded people doing all these very, very, very slick, nice looking bows, and it's definitely not an easy task.
It looks easy, but it's really not.
No, one push wrong with a knife, going too deep, or if you lose your patience, you will lose the product.
That's
instantly. Yeah.
It's funny you say about making shavings and bits of wood for the fire. About 2 years ago, I was trying to build something out of wood for the house, and it was And my wife came on a Sunday afternoon into my workshop, into my garage, and she said, what are you making? And I looked her in the eyes and I said, a mess and sawdust, because frankly, that's all I used.
Yeah. No, but sometimes you just have to just push on to something. I mean, and I think I go into to the woods, and some days I'll just see a nice place to sit, submerged with a cup of coffee and listening to the birds, or looking into a lake, or fishing and whatever. But most of the time, I have a tendency to just look at one big creative workshop. There's cordage. I can use that. And at some point, I'm just gathering things for projects on a imaginary to-do list that's endless. And sometimes you have these ideas just involving. I saw somebody making a tarp canoe, and that was, I think, a year or two ago. I went through a very stressed period of time in life at work. I was having a different job. It was really, really hard mentally to be in. And I couldn't figure out what went wrong. Why am I this stressed over this? So I went out there and just sat for a few days, and at some point I just started building this canoe out of a tarp, and found sticks and just tied them together, and that that single piece of work has brought a lot of joy. I mean, I've been having tours in it, I've been fishing in it, and just going through the whole process of building it, not knowing if it will ever hold me or just sink. I was just being there with a knife and an axe and a saw and some jute twine and a tarp for 3-4 days, not knowing if it would have a happy ending. Just pushing on, because you have to build the whole structure and then put it onto the water. I'd never built a canoe before. Just that moment, just getting up on top of it and just seeing that it was floating, that was awesome. And just everything fell into place was supposed to be. It's the same when you build a cardboard thing and you put up and you measure out and see what kind of wood you'd stuff in there under the ceiling or something in your house. And just everything fits together.
Did it have to float or be completed for you, or was the process of experimenting and thinking and trying, was that actually most of what was important?
No. If it didn't flow, then it would have made me 10 times or 20 times more motivated to build another one that would flow. So I had to rebuild it a bit, because it was just some 5 centimeters above the water level, and it was pretty wobbly, so I had to fix out something afterwards, but it was floating. So I was just going through the whole process and dreaming a bit on the way as well of what you're going to do if it floats. Yeah,
where you can go in it.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't have money for a real canoe, so I just, how can I work it? How can I work my way around it? Yeah.
That's awesome. It's funny that at the moment, I look at my daughter in school, and she's often being taught to not fail, and failure's bad. And yet, when I look at the people I want to employ or even have as friends, they're actually people who push themselves to fail so they can learn and have a second go or a third go until they get it right. And those people, they're people I want to hang out with, but also I want to employ or in a way. And so I'm loving what you're saying about I actually almost want to fail so I can be motivated to go and find the answer, and the answer will come one day.
Yeah, definitely. Now it will, if you just, every time you fail, if you analyze that, just not with a pen and paper and, measuring out everything, but just when you think about what went wrong, and most of the time you already have sort of a solution for the next thing while failing. And so you have just learned yourself something that you couldn't have just learned by reading. It's so much more to just get out there and being in it, to try things and not being afraid of failing. That should be mandatory for everybody to learn. But I guess it's there's some people, they say that there's only 2 kinds of people in the world. There's one who is willingly to say that they will pee in the shower, and then there's all the rest that would never admit it,
but do it anyway.
Yeah, we're all the same. We all make mistakes. That's my point. Yeah.
I often believe, and I'll link this back into bushcraft in a second, that there's more to be learnt from the past than there is the present. And when you think about Alexander Bell, who invented the telephone, and the guys who invented electricity, and so on and so forth, they failed for decades trying to achieve the same thing before they found their answer. The light bulb, another great example. Orville and Wilbur Smith, the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, There were two guys who were in a bicycle shop and decided they were going to make the bike that flies, and were the first guys to fly before the US government-sponsored project from Harvard University.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we've lost sight of what made us great as human beings, which really was a willingness to fail for decades before we found an answer.
Might be a true grain in there. I mean, there's definitely a lot of focus on being perfect. And that's not very healthy, because who's born perfect? I often say to my daughters that, how could you become good at that? Look at her. She's good at that. But, you get good at what you practice. If you come home every day from work and you just throw yourself onto a couch and there's a remote for the television and you flicker that on, and at some point you'd open the beer without, that's your skill. No, it's true.
You become
that's
a
what
master
you will
of the TV remote.
No, but that's what you will end up being really, really good at, because it's what you do. If you like to be good at drawing, well, then of course some kind of initiative to be motivated to draw or to want to be better. When it's also a lot about how you are bringing up your child, telling her that it's okay. It's a great part of being a human being to fail. We would never be here if it wasn't because people have failed a lot. We would still be living in cages. In caves, not cages. Caves. Yeah. Not cages. No, hopefully not.
Yeah.
It's Orson Welles. Yeah, no.
And it strikes me that bushcraft really is all about an ongoing journey of mastery, where you may well never get to the end. You may well never. Yeah, there is no end to what you can learn, develop, grow, or appreciate. It's just an ongoing journey until you decide to die one day.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's a classroom that's never ending, but you decide when to come and when to go.
It's the most special thing ever.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what do you have coming up in your future with regards to bushcraft? Have you got some goals, some ambitions, some dreams? Like, what do you want to go do?
I'd like to take up. I don't want to be. I don't think many people make it as their job. It's not a goal for me, but I would like it to have a larger place in my life. I like to hold courses and instruct some more. I've done that a lot in the past, and I loved it. So that's also hopefully going to be a part of my website, making courses here from the spring. But besides that, no, I don't have any end goal. Same with people ask me, what am I going to do when I grow up? I'm 44, and I hope I don't know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 90. Yeah.
Do you have a particular problem that's fascinating you with bushcraft at the moment? I'll give an example. So when I lived in the Northern Hemisphere in the UK, I was competent-ish at fire by friction in the sort of boreal forest region. And then I moved to South Africa and everything was different. The trees were all different. The terrain is different. Everything is different. And so I've got this fascination about becoming, I don't know, as moderately competent as I was in the Northern Hemisphere with that stuff, about learning that here. Do you have anything like that?
No, not really. I'm diving from one project to another, a bit like going to the fun park. I mean, from in one good post to a new post to I want to try that. Give me this and give me that. I'm just so curious. I want to know a bit of everything. Sometimes it's about things that grows. Can I eat them? Can I use them for something? And sometimes it's crafting, and sometimes it's just coffee. Yeah.
Just coffee is good enough.
Yeah. Sometimes, yes.
So the last on my list of things to ask you about is bushcraft or wilderness living, whatever you want to call it, is becoming more and more popular. But it's also leading to a lot of people going out in the woods with their new Grundfos Brooks axe and a saw and chopping down a bunch of trees and making shelters, often badly, but anyway, making shelters. And part of me is really excited by it. But part of me wanders through the woods and sees lots of half-assed shelters that are falling apart and trees that are being chopped down. So how do we go about, or how do people go about practicing their skills without decimating or breaking up the woodland too much?
I think it's, well, for me, it's a focus, as well as many of the blokes and good girls on social media. And I know that does this. It's a passing on a love for nature. You want to use it, but not abuse it, because it's a big difference. I've made a lot of shelters, but I always make a big deal out of, I didn't chop down one single tree. It's just collection of whatever was already lying on the ground. If I cut down things, I also always explain to people what kind of trees should and could you cut down. If there's small trees growing in the shades of big trees that would never have a chance anyway, or do you have the rights to even chop down a tree where you are? Is it someone else's property? Is it state property? Or it's not always just easy to chop down a tree, because what's the consequences? To raise some awareness, and especially from people who are, I don't know, I hate the word influencing, but who have a lot of people looking over their shoulders. There's a lot of things going into my mind looking at people doing exactly that, which I hate. And you have to really respect the resources in order to use them. And that is what it's mostly about for me, because I also want to have an environment around us for my children, my grandchildren to enjoy one day. It's not just about making cool pictures and cool shelters or whatever. Use whatever. You have to have some conscience what you do, especially outdoors. It's not an endless resource we have on our hands.
I often think that some people get a little bit confused between survival techniques and bushcraft. And for me, if it's a survival thing, like that, for me, that's life or death. Like,
yeah,
but by all means, chop some trees down and make a bloody great shelter and a big fire and don't die. That's quite important. But bushcraft is about working with the nature as opposed to just hacking it down and about it. And I think there's a bit of confusion in the world about that, especially on social media.
A lot. And there's a lot of confusing about what is. Sometimes I actually hate the word bushcraft. Sometimes I hate the wilderness skills. Who owes it? But at the end of the day, it's just a war of words. If you respect nature, and if you're out there in a responsible way, passing on knowledge, practicing knowledge without trashing everything. It's just like I always tell my children, you're the guests. It's like if you're at home visiting somebody, you don't trash their place. You have to really respect it, and you're guests here, so you have to behave yourself. You can play around, you can use the stuff here, but it's not. We don't have to trash things. It's not why we're here. So I think there's a lot of, it's a big task for people on social media doing outdoorsy things, to do it, and to present things the right way.
Yeah, because people often get to see your image or video of the shelter or the fire you've made. What they rarely get to see is how you've left it when you leave. Photos.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you made the fire as opposed to the earth, for instance, just as a difference?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just that, because coming to a forest and you see somebody just had a fire and they didn't cover anything, and it's sort of ruined. I mean, all you could have done was just to dig it down and cover it up, and it's just like seeing people just throwing out the trash. You see something, you get everything's been chopped down, and you just instantly knowing that it's some hardcore type wanting to be
Rambo,
a bushcraft, chopping it, whatever, just chopping down things. No, it makes me sad as well. It's a lot of confusion.
Yeah, when I instruct, I often suggest to people that we're caretakers of the outdoors, and just like a good caretaker would do at a school or something, you'd do maintenance, and you'd also at the end of every day look to leave it in a better condition than when you received it.
Yeah,
and I think if we took that as our primary starting point, I think there'd be less confusion and probably more trees standing.
Probably, yeah. If you're situated in a dense area with a lot of people using the same pieces of land for their outdoor experience, then you will definitely see a huge impact from people visiting. And I like to go places as far away from people as possible. Sometimes too long, because there's too long back when you're tired. But the sense that you can come into a sort of a virgin area and leave it that way, being a guest as a respectful human being, enjoying things, seeing things, being there, and just leave it as perfect as it is. That's a special thing for me. But I guess it's sort of, there's when I did the education as an outdoor guide, we were talking a lot about this a reference called the Valley of Silence. It was two friends. They were out hiking and they came into this valley. It was so beautiful. And it was a lake and mountains and trees and just looking around at everything, and it was so precious. And they just sat there all day and just looked, and they had never seen something beautiful as that. And they decided to bring their girlfriends, and so there were 4 of them going there, and they decided to keep it a secret. And there was just one more. He just had to have his other friend there, and you have to see it. And after a while, it sort of became the secret place that everybody knew of to go. The place and so the society around it would have noticed that there's a lot of people going up there. We should make some tracks, and they put up some signposts just to keep people on the path there. And after a while, it would be nice if we had something to pick up the trash, because people are throwing around trash there. But if you have to have trash cans, you have to get a road there, for the truck to pick up the trash. And then we have to have some parking lots, because there's many people going there, and you don't want to need to have some places for people in wheelchairs as well, because they have to be there as well, And then suddenly it changed. I think it's the core of a lot of how do we want to preserve or share the nature, and how do we want it for the next generation? Spoiled? Or I don't know.
It's funny. I often feel very selfish, Johnny. People ask me where my favorite place in the world in the outdoors is, and if I was given unlimited time and money, I could for me, it would have to be on a plane, but I could just go there and spend as much time as I wanted. And I'm really reluctant to give the GPS coordinates of where that place is.
Yeah, well, I get that a lot too. Where are you located? Can I visit you? Can we go there? Is it public? Is it private land? Can we go there? And I've just dive around it. I don't want to answer it because it's just precious. It takes a lot of time to find sometimes.
But I kind of feel selfish at the same time because I want other people to experience what I experience. And I suppose the answer is to suggest to them to go and find their own special place, wherever that may well be for them. And encourage them to go further afield to find it so that other people aren't going to be trashing it or whatever else. It's just it's a weird sensation. You want to share, but on the same time, you don't particularly want to share.
No, it's true. I think that's why some of the reason that I've been asked, well, why do you take so many photos? What you do, and it's the same thing on stake. I mean, you want to share it. You want to share the feeling, and maybe, hopefully, inspire somebody to go out there and feel the same way. But at the same time, no, I want to come back. I want to go there on my own to enjoy, because I don't need the party. I need the solitude.
That's it. And if everybody knew where it was, it would be a party.
No, you just put it. It would just be destroyed.
The quandary of life. So my final thoughtful question for you is: there's going to be quite a few of our listeners who either getting into bushcraft or would like to get into bushcraft. What's your advice for those people?
Well, I get that question a lot, and most of the time I just tell people to spend time out there. At first, you have to spend time there, and the more time you spend there, the more comfortable you are. And if you want to be doing bushcraft, well, start at small things. I mean, you don't have to buy a lot of gear. I think more than 70-80% of what I bring is something I've made myself, because it's fun to make. It's sort of a special feeling to me. But you don't have to start there. Start carving. I mean, get a knife. They don't have to cost much. I mean, most of my things I usually use, is a small $10 Opinel. Yeah, it works fine for me. I mean, it's not a knife already. It's not supposed to be $400 or $500. That doesn't make you a great bushcrafter. But once you're there, once you start noticing things around you, once you start just being there, then you start appreciate things, and then after a while, you will start realizing what's in them books that started you off in the first place, or in them pictures that started you off. What are they actually doing? But it's not the other way around. You have to be in it. You have to appreciate it. You have to feel the texture of wood to be able to carve. It's not enough to just see people do it. So the BP way, the Baden Powell, learning by doing. Yeah. Exactly.
Snap. This is my 4-year-old daughter's bushcraft pen.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So the rounded end. She loves it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You can see it or not.
Yeah.
I often think that if people could get into bushcraft, go and find some wood somewhere and just sit and drink your coffee and listen to the noises, smell the smells, watch what's going on about you, and then work out what you're going to do after that.
Yeah, and then you can always go somewhere and people tell you, well, that's meditation, or it's mindfulness, or it's survival, or it's a wilderness skill, or it's whatever. But at the end of the day, that's just words. There's no right and wrong. I see so many people on social media. They buy themselves poor with gear. I mean, instead of enriching themselves with the experience you can get. But I've seen it a lot of times when I was working as an outdoor guide, a trekking guide, or expedition guide, or whatever. I would pick people up in the airport, and I would instantly know who am I going to look after just a bit more. The old guy with his old Fjellraven rucksack from '74 and old used pants, and he would look around in a calm way and say, "Oh, he's going to be okay." And then there's two new, well-trained buff guys, surfer hair and everything is bling bling from the outdoor shop, and very new, the price tag's still there, and they got all the great gear. Okay, I definitely need to put a claw on those two, because they're going to get themselves lost. It's true, because they don't know what they're going to do about themselves. They're a bit insecure. So it's like, okay, I'm buying this very expensive jacket because then it will take care of me. And then it will send a signal immediately to people that I have everything sorted. I'm perfect.
I've coached and guided a lot of kayaking in my life. And kayaking's wonderful because you often get changed in a car park on the side of a river. You put your dry suit on, I always watch my clients put their kayaking clothing on, because
that's the same. You can use a fortune on stuff. Yeah,
that's it. But you get guys who spent, I don't know, $5,000 on all this shiny stuff, and you watch them on, and they don't know how to put it on properly or in a sequence or fluidly. And that's always the alarm bell of, oh, today's going to be a hard day in the office.
Hard day as well, because they're a size 8 and it's a size 13 in a kayak, like your shoes.
Yeah.
Then you're not a good kayaker. It has to feel the movements of your body. So now it's the same, you can always buy stuff if you're insecure, but it's not going to replace practice.
It's interesting. My first boss when I was 18, he'd done a lot of survival stuff with Lofty Wiseman before Lofty passed away. And he always used to say, the amount of safety kit you've got is directly linked to how insecure you are.
That's true. Yeah. No, it's true. The more Kohansky, it's in the bushcraft world, it's sort of a neon sign. The more you carry, the other way around sometimes. The more you know, the less you carry. I mean, there's some wisdom in there, but it's also it's not always like that. Sometimes you need to go into the correct environment with the correct stuff.
But just not double what you need.
No, it's I was always called the big rucksack with the skinny legs in my army days. I always carried way too much. Yeah.
Gone the opposite way since you left the army.
Yeah. No, we had to haul a lot of things. It's better to have a need than not than to need a have not. And just the focus there, just okay, I'll just carry it. And you just lean forward, and just bite the terrain, and then you discover if I'm going to actually enjoy this outdoors, I want to minimize things instead, going the other way around.
Awesome. Well, Jonny, I want to thank you for your time today, and I want to thank you for inspiring so many people to share your passion for the woods and bushcraft and get outdoors and go and experiment to the point of failure and then press repeat and go until they find the answer.
Yes, failure, so important. Thank you very much for having me on the show, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I look forward to next time in Scandinavia buying you a beer.
Yeah. No, if you ever come to Denmark, you just send a text or something, and I'm known to have good coffee around me.
Oh, we can be friends for life if there's coffee involved.
Yeah, coffee makes the world go round, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
Cheers, Johnny. Thanks for your time.